Hello and welcome to the North American Invasive Species Management Association's Inspector Certification course for the Weed-Free Products Program. My name is Elizabeth Brown and I am the Program Manager for the Weed-Free Products Program here at NASMA. I also serve to coordinate the Professional Development Program and Legislative Affairs. First, let me share with you a little bit about who we are. NASMA is a 28-year-old organization. In 2012, we changed our name to be Altaxa. Our mission is to support, promote, and empower invasive species prevention and management in North America. Our vision is that North America's lands and waters are protected from invasive species. What we do here at NASMA. We promote international standards, such as these certified weed-free product standards you're going to be learning about soon. We also do education and advocacy. Twice a year, NASMA hosts the National Invasive Species Awareness Week, or NISA. Check us out at nisa.org and get involved. We also do public outreach and awareness. Play Clean Go is our public-facing outreach campaign, and you can learn more at playcleango.org. Be sure to check out the materials and guidance on Work Clean Go, which teaches inspectors and other professionals like yourself how to stop the spread of invasive species while working. Professional development is a huge part of what we do here at NASMA, given that our mission is to serve invasive species managers. We have a Management of Invasive Species Certification course. We also host free monthly webinars on the third Wednesday of each month, and we offer special trainings and workshops throughout the year. We also host a large annual conference each year in the fall. I hope that you will join us this year, either in person or virtually. And you can learn more about everything that NASMA does at nasma.org. So let's talk about the Certified Weed-Free Products Program. This program started in 1993 with our Forage standards. A grassroots group of county western land managers came together. The goal was to ensure that the same list of noxious weeds were being controlled and not being spread across jurisdictions through these high priority pathways. The gravel standards were added in 2006, and in 2020 we added our weed-free certified mulch standards. The Certified Weed-Free Products Program is a cooperative program. It sets the standards for inspection and certification of weed-free products. Currently, we have standards for forage, gravel, and mulch. We provide a unified system of certification training and standards for field inspection across jurisdictional boundaries. This is the only international standards prevention program for these specific pathways, and it relies on the cooperation and agreement to uphold standards across jurisdictions. We are focused on building positive public-private partnerships and serving land managers. The certification process looks a little bit like this. It starts with an MOU, or a Memorandum of Understanding, between NASMA and the designated authority. Next, that organization that signs the MOU with NASMA adopts our weed-free product minimum certification standards. Once that happens, all the inspectors across the continent are trained the same way. So online in this very course that you're taking right now, or potentially in person at our annual conference or an approved class. Once the inspectors are certified, they are able to start forming those relationships and engaging with industry and providing field inspections and product certifications according to the minimum standards. Then for products that are certified, we do offer a certificate of inspection, and in some cases, the designated authority may also issue a transit certificate. This is the first page of our MOU, just so you can see what it looks like. If you're here in this class, you're operating under an existing MOU for forage, gravel, mulch, all three, or any combination thereof. A little bit about the MOU holders or the designated authorities. We have a lot of different types of partners that participate in this program, and we are always open to forming new partnerships. MOU holders or program implementers may be state agencies, such as the Department of Agriculture, could be a federal agency, a local or county government. We also work with authorized associations, so the crop improvement associations, seed certification associations. We have many soil and water conservation districts participating in this program, university extension agents, or other governmental authorities approved by NASMA. You are in the inspector certification training class right now, so welcome. So glad you are here. This is a 3-year certification for you, so once you pass today's class, your certificate will be good for 3 years. In the future, when you're ready to recertify, you can do that at our NASMA annual conference in the fall, online anytime, at one of our NASMA approved state, provincial, or local classes. And again, the inspector certified through this program must be associated with an MOU. And so if you're here, you are associated with an MOU, and we are so grateful to have you. Okay, program support. This provides minimal support to NASMA to coordinate this program on a continental scale. It helps us provide program administration, communications, committee management, certificate testing, and program improvements. Our MOU holders' annual fee is $100, and the fee for inspector certification is $40 per inspector for the 3-year certificate. Here's a list of our weed-free product MOU holders as of January 1st, 2021. This map illustrates that we have MOU holders implementing programs from the Pacific Coast to the Atlantic Coast and all throughout the nation in between. We're working on getting our program going in Canada, and we are always looking forward to forming new partnerships and enabling new programs to start across the nation. Our weed-free product minimum standards have the same core components in each of our product standards. They begin with an introduction and a purpose, definitions, some of which are the same across the standards and some are unique to the product itself. Our minimum standard for the products, the standards for how to conduct a field inspection, recommended supplies, our prohibited species list, which is the same across the 3 standards, the certificate of inspection, certificate of transit, and the certificate markings. Now, as you progress through this online course, you are going to get very detailed information, product standards training from our subject matter experts that have been doing this for many, many years. So really dig in as you move forward through this training, through the modules that describe the standards and teach you how to implement these product standards for forage, gravel, and mulch. This is the NASMA prohibited weed list. There are 55 species on this list. And again, it is the same list across the product standards. Now keep in mind that this is a minimum list, and the designated authority may add species of high priority in their space to their field inspections. And so you may add state listed weeds, county listed weeds as you are implementing this program. But this is the minimum list that everybody is sharing and trying to manage and prevent the spread of. I also want to note that we have a process within NASMA through our Weed-Free Products Committee by which a petition can be made to add a species to this list. So if you feel that there is a reason to add a species to this list, you may initiate that process through the Weed-Free Product Committee. Okay, so in summary, and again, our mission is to support, promote, and empower invasive species prevention and management in North America. If you are not currently a member of NASMA, I strongly encourage you to check us out at nasma.org and explore our individual membership options, become a member, get involved, potentially explore our partnership options, and maybe engage with us at a partnership level. Either way, we appreciate you, we value you, and we're grateful that you are here participating in the Certified Weed-Free Products Program. Okay, here are your next steps as you proceed through this online training. The next screen that you're going to see as you move forward past the video is going to be a document screen that you can download the MOU template so that you can see what that looks like. Then you're going to proceed to take a 10-question quiz for this module video that you just finished, okay? Once you finish this introduction section, you're going to move on to the product trainings that are specific to your MOU. Each one of these modules, forage, gravel, and mulch, have a video. So be sure to watch the entire video. If you miss something, you can rewind and rewatch. If you want to watch it a couple times, you can definitely do that too, okay? So watch the entire video. Then download the documents that are here for you. So we have the standards and the certificates right in this training with the video, so you can get everything you need as you progress through this course. So go through the forage, gravel, and mulch product trainings that apply to your MOU. Download the standards and take the quiz for each section. The last module in this training is the weed identification, and everybody must take weed identification and pass the quiz at the end. Okay, so that is your path moving forward. Once you complete all of the quizzes, then you will become certified to be a weed-free product inspector. I will follow up with you or another NASMA staff member via email to provide you with your certificate. If at any moment during the training course or as you are moving forward working as an inspector, if you have any questions or need any support, please reach out to me or any of the other NASMA staff members, including Executive Director Belle Bergner. You can also reach out to our committee co-chairs or any of our committee members, and you can find their names and information on our website at nasma.org. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to working with you, and please let me know if there's ever anything I can do to help you. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Welcome to the Weed-Free Forage Program standards, going through how you would actually do inspections in the field as a inspector, and how we go through that process, explaining some of the forms and how we fill them out, how I fill them out when I go out in the summer and do the certifications for forage. So I am a supervisor in Sublette County, Wyoming, which is Pinedale. It's in the northwest corner of Wyoming. I live at fairly high elevation, so my forage program consists of mostly wild grass hay. I've been involved with, originally started being involved with NAMA back in 2006 when I graduated from college for my master's degree. And I've been an assistant supervisor, and now as a supervisor, we have a very large program in our area for certified hay because it is fed on our elk feed grounds in the winter. And so many of our producers produce hay to be fed to the elk. And it's also used on all of our public land in our county, as well as sold a lot out of the county. And that's kind of my history. I've been involved with the Weed-Free Forage program for many years as my supervisor at the time, Adrienne Peterson. Any of you that have history with NAMA or NASMA might have trained with her in the past, and I started helping her as a young professional and then took over the forage training after that. Just jumping in to the standards, we'll just go through them kind of bullet by bullet. Forage shall be free of prohibited weeds as defined by these minimum standards. So we have a lot of definitions related to the standard, but basically the forage that you're going to be looking at should not have weeds with tropical parts in it. It needs to be inspected in the state or province of origin by a designated authority who will have gone through this training and have a certificate number that says they are under their MOU holder and that they've been certified as an inspector. And it has to be certified before the producer cuts the hay or whatever crop you're looking at that case. So you're going out in live standing vegetation as you move forward through that. The next part of the standard relates to the forage as it can contain no noxious weeds, which is a little bit hard to understand because basically it asks for it to not have tropical viability or tropical parts. So you could have Canada thistle that's only vegetative, and you could allow that field or that section of that field to be certified. If it's a plant like maybe leafy spurge, one of the worst that we deal with, that plant can have buds on its roots. It can have varieties of different life stages of vegetative growth in the field. And so you as the certifier get to decide how you feel about those plants, if it could have the ability to reproduce by that hay crop. And basically the minimum standards relates to having no tropical viability in the field. So there's 55 species on the NASMA prohibited weed list. You also add to that your state noxious weed list or province noxious weed list, as well as if you are in an area where you have a county noxious weed list to add as well. It's NASMA base plus your state list or province list, and then also if you want to be even more restrictive, if you happen to have a county or local list, you would also use that. There are several other types of products that can be produced from forage, and some of those are lined out here on this slide. There's pellets, and pellets are defined in the standards. They still need to have no viable seed of noxious weeds or tropicals, and they are approved through testing and when they're made. And then we also have the potential of cubed hay. And people that deal with us are very familiar with the process in which these products are made from our hay. And as we go through, there's pellets that are made. We've had some conversations about these condensed bales that are basically like shrink-wrapped bales. But the most important thing about the cubed hay, as it's defined in the standards, it may also be certified in the field of origin. So if the field is inspected, then that product then becomes inspected. We would assume the facility is clean then. So just a couple other byproducts of the forage. So you would fill out an inspection certificate, which you agree to with NASMA through the MOU process. You say how that's going to look. You use our forms. Some states make their own form because they put it into their weed law, but it has a minimum of what should be required on that form that's in Appendix B. And then we also have what's called, we have to be able to market in some way. So there's an interstate shipment. Certified weed-free forage should be accompanied by their certificate or markings, which could be stickers in some cases, wrapping, or certified twine, which is the purple and yellow twine. We'll show that a little bit later. This can be done with a digital copy. It used to be when I first started certifying hay, a certificate that was in triplets. It was a carbon copy, and one copy would stay at the office, one copy would go to the producer, and the other copy I think actually was intended to go to the extension office. So now we just make digital copies and we send those to with the landowner when he's shipping the hay. There also is the transfer certificate, which is mostly used in the case of forage. You can write that up for 10 loads of hay, and it's basically a handwritten duplicate of the certification form, and it also has information on where the final destination for that forage is and who will be shipping it. So that's just another way to track it so that we're not having to make multiple copies of the certificate. Just because this whole program is based on the honor system, we tried to work some ways where it was more streamlined in that way. The next part of the standard is that the field must be inspected within 10 days prior to harvest. So what we recommend is for our landowners here to give us about a week or 2 weeks notice. Hey, I think we're going to cut around the 15th, and then we can know to work that into our schedule. You have to certify it before it's cut. So in this, if you look at this picture, if it's already, the swathers already ran through it and you get there and they got your ranchers already started hay, you would only be certifying the standing crop. And then they have 10 days to get that hay put up or cut. And so if you've dealt with hay producers, they're always having some equipment issues, or maybe you get some rainy weather, they don't get to everything, then they would call you and ask you to come back out if they haven't got it cut within that 10-day window. And the field must be inspected again, like I said, if it's past the 10 days. So getting into the actual field inspection, and there must be a minimum of 2 entry points per field. There's a minimum of 1 entry point per every 10 acres or 4 hectares. and each point of entry shall be at least 150 feet into the field, and each additional 150 feet traveled may constitute a new entry point. It really depends on your producer, the field layout, pivots versus more of a wild hay field, how that will look. So here's some kind of examples of what you would do when you go out to a field. Most of the time we know the weeds that we would be looking for in that area. Oh yeah, this area is suspect of course, always Canada thistle, but we know that could be these weeds on disturbances on ditches and these weeds in lower spots in the field. If you have a history with that ranch, then you would know to go and look for weeds at certain locations you found in the past. But here's some examples of how that would look as you go through the field. Your travel should be uninterrupted. So once you go to a field, you don't do part of it and then stop. You just keep working, proceeding through that field to be inspected. You shall inspect the border, including surrounding fences, fence rows, roads. If there's a road through the field, definitely that would be a great vector for invasion. If there's easements or right-of-ways associated with that field for buffer areas, all that you determine based on a field by field basis, and no two fields really are the same. So that's a break. I'll go through a little bit more in a little bit on how that would look, but one of the big and important things that I think divides the NASMA standard from other standards that some states use is that we also are required in our minimum standards to inspect the storage area. We don't want clean hay taken from the field behind and stacked in a hay bunker or within an area that is full of noxious weeds. So you must inspect this stacking area as well. One way to get around that is if that hay is going to be sold, which almost all my hay is shipped out on truck somewhere, is the producer, a lot of producers that I deal with, rather than putting it in a stack yard, will just stack it right in the field where you already certified it. They'll stack it up, maybe close to a gate where the trucks can come in and load it from there. And then another point to think about when you're in an area is that an inspector may not inspect fields for which he has ownership or financial interest. That's just a CYA in the world we live in now. You want to make sure that you're holding up the honor system with this program and in the best interest of everyone to not certify a field that's yours. If you have to call in a neighboring county or another inspector to help you out, almost everybody's willing to help with that. So now we'll go into the actual inspection form. Sorry, it skipped forward on me. So this is the NASMA form, and it's a fillable form. In Wyoming, where I am from, we took this form and we made it digital through our state weed-free forage committee and made it a digital form in Access. So you can have drop-down menus for your producers and your county and your phone numbers. It makes it a little bit easier to fill out. And then we have a digital record of it through Access database. You can do some of the same things depending on what technology you use in your areas with Google Sheets and Google Forms. It's a handy way to make things work. So pretty simplistic on the form. You would add your enforcing jurisdiction, which would be whatever county or MOU. I know we have some county people, we have some extension, whatever you're associated with MOU. So I usually put Sublette County, Wyoming, weed-free forage form. You add your dates, your inspection number that you have that you will gain through the certification process. And then you fill out the producer's information. So in some cases we have it, you'll see it says owner/producer. And some places you have somebody owns the hay field, but somebody puts up and sells the hay. So you try to put as much valuable information in there as you can. Usually I will put the information of who's going to be the seller because they're going to be in charge of those transactions. Get their address to your best ability to describe the field. I have some producers that have thousands of acres of hay that we do. And so you try to give some description. You can use the GPS location. Sometimes it's the home field or the east field or the back 40, whatever works best for you. You'll label the forage product. Most of us have the ability to have some kind, whether it's our county GIS layer or we're using Esri or Google Earth, that you can actually get a very accurate number of acres that you're certifying. I sometimes will take it in the field with me and make a little polygon, or once I get back to the office, I'll do it. A lot of times if I have a new producer, I will look at the layout of their field from the aerial photo. That way I can make a plan. Oh, I need to make sure I hit this ditch. I need to make sure I do these things in the field. It just helps you guide your way through that on a new field especially. And then we go into the tons or bales. And that's really hard because producers make different size of weights of bales. So we actually at our office, our producers call back in and tell us how many bales they produced at the end of their cutting period. They'll just have all the balers have a count option on them, and we'll use that with our producers. And then the packaging size. So small square, 4x4, round square bales, ton bales, whatever you need to use in that case. And then you write that in the packaging type and size. And then you also write on there if it has markings. If some people use galvanized wire, it's really phased out, but some people were using that. There's tags, there's stickers some states are using. And then of course there's the NASMA certified twine, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And then there are levels of certification. And this has been a question lately on, shall we change this? Because I think people read into, every producer would really like to have this exceeds expectation hay. But if you read that definition as it's written on that standard, it only contains only the specified forage and mulch. So mulch in this case would be straw, not mulch as in our mulch program, with no other plant material. In my area, we're certifying wild hay. And so there's Timothy, Garrison, Beckmania, Red Top, but there's also a whole slew of wild flowers and other forbs that are in that. And in most cases, unless I happen to be certifying an alfalfa pivot that has no other forage in it, will I ever mark exceeds. But if I were to talk with my federal partners, they would want that exceeds hay. But in most cases, that's not the case. So then most of the fields that we're going to do would be meets requirements of the standards. The material contains only variable amounts of annual weeds and or other weeds not listed on the prohibited weed list. That's working with a producer that's cleaned up their field, has treated weeds if they happen to be in there before the time of harvest. And then you have the minimum, which is pretty standard, especially for new producers or fields that have a lot of ditches or a lot of roads around them. So the definition for that one is, this forage contains variable amounts of prohibited weeds which are immature when harvested or were treated to prevent seed formation. These plant parts, although not usually desirable in forage product, are considered unable to begin new infestations, which is really the whole basis of this program, is to not spread weeds, prevent weed spreading. And they're also failed. And in 15 years, almost 15 years I've been inspecting hay, I've only failed a few fields. You are allowed as an inspector to break up fields, certify the center of a field, the west side of a field, by making a map for that producer. Of course, this is all going on the honor program as you go through. You'll see at the bottom of this inspection certificate that there is a termination date, and people do those a little bit differently, but our recommendation through the committee is that is through the next kind of field season. So I actually terminate my certificates here at the end of the year. So for this year, it would be the end of January for 2020. And then you sign that with your title and your number, of course, and you file that away, one at the office and then one to the producer. So this is just listing of those minimum standards. If your agency is just signing up, you can work with the committee as well as our staff at NASMA to help make a form, or you can always use the NASMA form if you have, you probably need to put your logo on it and those kinds of things, and we can help you to figure that out. So just some more suggestions. Our training is to go through the minimum standards, but also help you so that if you are signing up, you can go out and do this. One of the important things that we have done, and I suggest for everyone to do, is to, from the beginning, is to engage your producer. If somebody calls you up and says, hey, I'd like to see if I could get my hay certified. So you work with them, maybe you get on your computer, you see where their field is, you figure out which part of the field they think they have the best chance at. If they have, I ask them, hey, what weeds are you currently dealing with on the lot? All kinds of questions about how their production goes, just getting to know that person. I feel like that helps in them working through the honor system. If I'm going to a brand new person's ranch, then I like them to walk with me, or they can drive me around on a four-wheeler, or we could ride a horse. Some people do it on motorcycles the first time. Follow them through. You learn the ditches so you don't end up falling in a ditch, those kinds of things. I like to take field glasses. I like to take my phone so I can, if I need to take GPS points, I can. If I need to take a picture of a plant to inform the landowner, oh, I found this today, you need to come out and treat it. Let's show you. You have to cut around it, all those kinds of things. And so as you're going through, you'll want to think about what you need. Some people, my boss used to take some bright orange spray paint. If she found something, she would spray it real obnoxiously so they knew where it was, so they knew to cut around it. Some people will take that, the tape, like bright colored tape, and tie on weeds or tie around an area. You can GPS those areas and make a map for the producer. I always try to have a plan for fields. There's some fields I've been certifying for 10 years. I know the plan as I'm going to go out to them, or I know I can drive the perimeter of that one. So in the sake of time, I'm going to drive the perimeter of that field. I'm going to go in. I'm going to look at different low spots and high spots because those are the changing elements in the ecology of that field. I'm going to look at the ditches. I'm going to intersect outside of the field as much as I know I have to based on acreages. All of those types of things. You can record your paths when you get done, or you can watch and see, oh man, I didn't get this corner. There's lots of fancy things we can do with technology there. Some handy inspection supplies. You can see the tape here on a mullen. Take a camera to educate the producer what you find, or yourself. GPS, water. Most of the time when we're doing these inspections, it's pretty mosquito-y, at least in my country. Some kind of flagging or marking material, orange paint if you need to, and a weed book or a tool to be able to help your producer learn the noxious weeds. That was quick and how we would go through it. Like I said earlier, you have to base your inspection route and your plan based on the properties, the actual physical properties of that field. Sometimes there's maybe a main ditch or a canal that rolls through it, so you have to do one side and the other. You'll learn that as you go. If I'm doing a pivot, I'll walk the tire rings, or I'll walk on one, then I'll switch to the next one and walk that one. Low and high spots, if there's any topography in the field, try to hit those. And then I'll check the stack yard, either at the beginning or end. If they happen to be infilled, that makes it easier, of course. You'll figure out your routine as you approach a field each time and what best suits you. So you'll see on the screen right now, this is a transfer certificate. And not everybody uses these. For some reason, it's cutting off the side, which is unfortunate, but I'll try to go through it as best I can. So if you look at it, this section at the top that's circled here is basically the transporter and the end user information. So where's that hay going? How many trips? How many semi-loads or truckloads? You get the actual license plate and the information of who's trucking it. If your hay is crossing state lines, you need this to go through the port or the certification point with them, or excuse me, the certification form with you. And then this bottom section is basically just a written duplicate of the actual form itself. You'll still add your date issued, termination date, any of your information for your county or district, and then you just fill out the form. We seem to do less and less of these as people use certified twine, but those entities that truck a lot do these forms as they're going out. So that's a transit certificate. People go over that pretty quick because not everybody is actively using them. They're basically a handwritten copy. There are minimum requirements based on that. Much of the same information we've gone through, keeping in mind there is a termination date and an issuing date. And you'll have to know pretty specific information about who is trucking that product and where it's going. As we go through that process, so twine, we have been using certified twine for many years. In about 2012 or 13, we switched because we were having quality issues. We switched to a Utah-based company called PolyExcel. They have been great to work with. The only really negative in working with them, which we've had with other companies we had worked with, is that you have to order your twine very early in the year. We will be making these orders through Marcia and Elizabeth and the rest of the committee early, like before 2021. So like in December, they're typically due. They make all different weights and knot strengths of twine. It's this purple and yellow twisted twine. It's very high quality and it's American made. We can answer questions about the twine. I really encourage people to use it. It's way easier to sell the twine to your producers. It's not much more than normal twine that they would buy is. Based on the program, on a small square bale, only one side needs wrapped with certified twine, but a lot of my producers like it, so they're just using the twine. They buy it from us and use it. In my county, in Sublette County, we give them the first roll of twine, and then after that, they buy it at cost from us. And lots of people do many different things with their certification program, with their twine sales, with their tag sales. Some people charge a base fee for an inspector to come out. Some people, it's free. Some people have a base fee and then they add an acreage fee onto that afterwards. It's basically how the economics in your MOU area work. And you're free to set that. NASMA has no control over how you set the fees on your program. We just try to help and advise and can work through our committee of many long-term and new producer or certified authorities to help you answer those questions. So that's what the twine looks like. And that is the conclusion of my presentation. Thanks for other committee members and sharing photos with me. You always forget about taking photos when you go out and actually doing your job out in the field. Elizabeth can go through a few of the questions.
Yep, great job, Julie. Thank you so much. We do have two questions that popped up in the chat. So we have one question from Brett Nelson. How do producers typically ensure that trucks entering their fields to pick up stacked hay do not introduce new infestations of noxious weeds?
That's a great point. I don't think that we do have any control over that. And I think that is the producer's job in that case, since it is their private property, to ask those trucking companies to use best management practices to either come in clean or wash before they come. We have never really tried to integrate the trucking part of this into the standards. I guess if you have a producer that's worried about that, or if you're worried about that in your county, you could go above and beyond the standard where the truck would park like on a roadway or something like that, and the producer would use a tractor to load that hay out. So if there was an introduction, it would be on a major road. If anybody else has any suggestions, that's what I would say. Most of the time, I guess we haven't seen where that's been an issue, but definitely we know that vehicles are a major transportation and corridor in moving as a vector for moving seeds around.
Okay. Thank you. We have a couple of questions about fees. We have basically, I'll just put them together. How does it work with fees in terms of, does the producers charge fees in order to, do they increase the cost of their product? Do the MOU holders charge inspection fees? I know it varies by jurisdiction and you talked a little bit about that, but could you just speak a little bit more to how fees work and maybe how you do it where you're at?
So I can speak to how I do it and then how I know other partners based through just communication with other folks on the committee. So in Sublette County, Wyoming, we do not charge a fee. We encourage any and all producers to participate in our program because my county is 80% public land. And so we feel that it is worth my time and my staff's time to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure weeds aren't spreading through hay. And so we do not charge. We go out as many times as we would need to inspect each producer's hay. We have about 40 producers in our county, thousands of acres of hay that are produced here. Almost all of those go on our public land or are sold to local ranches. And once again, so that's a no cost. We do have the tags. If somebody's just doing a couple bales, we will give them a few tags. If somebody wants to take 3 bales up to go into the wilderness or up on the forest to hunt, we have those available. We also have the twine. Like I said, our twine is available for any producer to use. We'll get any weight they want in. We just ask them to let us know in ordering that before. Usually we put the orders into NASMA staff by Christmas. And I have producers that order pallets, and I have producers that I know order like 8 rolls, we give each producer 1 roll, and then our cost is their cost. So whatever it costs us, if it's 38 bucks a roll, then we charge them that amount. So other places will charge a service charge on that twine just because it does cost paperwork and things. So they'll have a little bit of administrative fees, like a 5% markup. And there are counties and other MOU holders that will have maybe a $50 fee for this inspector to come out. And then maybe it's just 50 bucks. So other places will have that $50 fee just to come, and then it's however many acres, maybe they have a $2 per acre fee, and so it's per acres in that way. It basically is how you need to fund a program. If you're in an area that's busy enough that you have to hire someone to certify hay, then maybe you need to come up with the money to pay for that person. And by charging, it also sometimes could weed out those really small people that maybe are just getting a bale or two. Maybe it's not really worth your time. We have a lot of people that maybe don't even sell their hay, but just want us to inspect it because they want to make sure they're doing what they need to ethically to not have weeds in their field. I don't know, Andre, do you want to, I don't know if you can jump on, if you want to comment on what Nevada can do.
So we do charge in our state, but it's also considered a normal work function for me at the Nevada Department of Agriculture. So we do try to keep the cost down. We do have some fees associated with it to try to compensate for a lot of the time that I have to spend driving. It's not uncommon in Nevada because I cover the whole state. I'll spend 6 or 8 hours driving for 1 or 2 hours worth of actual inspection time. So we do charge for our time, and we do ask that they reimburse us for the mileage at the federal rate. Our twine we also sell at cost, so we keep that as cheap as possible for the producers. And then other than that, we do have a one-time per year inspection fee of $50. So there's a flat $50 fee for every producer per year. And then with the time, we try to, again, we want people to participate in the program, so I do have to charge them something, but we try to keep it as reasonable as possible. So what we tend to do is if I'm driving all the way from Reno to somewhere in the southern portion of the state, I try to find the closest quote unquote major town, and I do the billing for the time from there usually and consider that to be their local hub. In some areas, that's really just not a good option because they're just 6 hours away from everything. And in that case, then we need a little bit of that financial compensation again for just the drive time. But our primary goal, because it's a voluntary program in Nevada, is to encourage participation. So again, I just have to emphasize that while we do charge, we try to keep it as low as possible to encourage that participation.
Elizabeth, I see a question that I didn't touch base on a whole bunch about if there is a weed or an infested ditch, what we do. So in my case, what I do, if you find something in a field, because it's an honor program, what I try to do is, what am I comfortable with? What am I willing to sign my name to? So if I have a producer and he has a ditch in it that just has some thistle on it, and maybe it's not even really blooming yet, it hasn't gone to seed yet, what I will do, even though that's okay by the standards, I will talk with him about it, make sure that he knows he needs to get control of that thistle. But what I will do is if I find a weed in the field, or whether it's topical parts or not, typically I'll have that conversation, and then I will tell them, you, from where that patch is or where that fence line is or where that ditch is, you need to go 2 swaths in. So either 2 swaths, or if they're using a sickle mower, you can delineate that with your producer in ways that make it easy for them. I will tell them to cut around if I put a flag. I have people that actually put their GoPros on and send me video. Okay, I see your point. See me going around it, and they'll like send us videos jokingly of them following our instructions. If you have a new producer, sometimes we can't always, especially in the case where Andrea is driving 6 hours to go to a field, but you can always give it another drive-by. Make sure they're following your instructions. Give them consequences if they're not. Like, okay, if you don't follow what I say, I'm not going to certify your hay next year. You need to do these things to make sure that you can still be involved in the program. Most producers that want to engage with us in this program are doing so because there is a little bit of financial incentive for certified forage. whether it's going cross state lines or onto public land. Do what you're comfortable with in the field. If the whole outside of a pivot, like the corners are weedy and there's some prohibited weeds in there, you can make them where those 2 outside rows aren't certifiable and everything else in the interior is. It's up to your discretion on how you do that. The other question I see is based on dates and how you decide what this one's saying transit certificate termination, but I guess it could go on the form as well. So if somebody's moving hay, there's been some variation and some questions brought to that quite a bit actually lately on the dates. But what we do is we terminate our certification on that field on that hay at the end of the year, because something could come up in the spring, we wouldn't know. If there's a producer that has some hay that's overwintered, we can always go out. We know that hay was certified when it went into the bale and re-inspect the stack yard area, make sure nothing came up, make sure they're not going to be transporting weeds, and then you can either do a new form or amend your dates there. And on the transit certificate, we will write it like, okay, this guy comes in, he says he's going to take 10 semi-loads of this hay to Jackson or wherever they're going to go, Salt Lake City from us. And we would say 10 loads and they're going to do it by the next 2 weeks. Some other people might be able to speak to that, what they do with their transit certificate more than I. A lot of our hay here is actually kept very local, and that those transits of hay is done within a week or so. I think another important thing is that when this program was initially established, and for the many years that I guess I've been buying hay, it's great to be able to use it as a tool to get in communication with your producers. So take advantage of that. If you have somebody that's a new producer or has just moved into the area, or maybe that you've never worked with before, you could send them a letter. You can go knock on their door and say, hey, I see you have a lot of hay. Would you like to engage in this program where it's certification? There's a market for certified hay in our area, and use that as a way in with those folks to help them develop a weed management plan, not only to benefit them by allowing them to produce weed-free forage, but also as a way to have them manage their weeds on their place. Usually people, once they get their hay fields clean, the rest of their area the ranch will become clean too. I try to make sure there's not weeds on their rows, or not only in the stack yard, but on the rest of the ranch. Most people are very welcome to that information if they're going to invite you on their place, and so you can use that as your foot in. I know many of us that have been certifying hay for a while. It's a prevention program to prevent the spread of weeds, but also to encourage education about the topic and management of those species that happen to be infield. So use that to your advantage as a certifying authority.
There's a question from Benita. Do you see that one, Julie?
The wheat straw?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't deal with straw, but how I would read that, if I understand Benita's question correctly, is so the wheat crop is harvested with a combine, and then that producer would like to cut that straw to produce baled straw. So in that case, the product of the straw is actually the stubble. And so they would run their combines through, harvest their wheat, and then you would inspect that stubble, the actual vegetative part of the wheat, and make sure there aren't plants there. So I know sometimes the timing is weird with that. We have producers, if you need a little bit better answer than what I can provide, there are a lot of producers that do that up in the Dakotas and areas. So you would, if you have a working relationship with that producer, it'd be great if you could maybe go before they harvest anything and make some trips through the field to see what they have, because it's usually fall before they're harvesting. And then you're going to be there even later in the year to harvest that stubble. So for the purposes of straw, you would be inspecting the stubble. So you'd walk that field in the same way, just as if it was a green crop. You'd be looking for the prohibited weeds, same areas, fence lines, ditches, stacking areas in that field. Hopefully that answers your question, Benita. A little bit tricky, and there has historically been a lot of questions about that based on the timeline, because that straw is very late in its.
Great. I just have one more question for you from Emily. There are increasing concerns about dissolved toxins from paints and plastics in standing water. Do you have recommendations for less toxic variations? And this program doesn't really address that, but I wanted to acknowledge that question and give you an opportunity to answer it.
So her question is more about, is there a potential toxicity from the twine? Is that how I'm understanding that, Elizabeth?
I think so.
I can't really speak to that. I think that's each person or the end user's call. If they are not, those are personal concerns that they have, then they would need to work with the producer. There has to be some way for that producer to collect and package that, whether that's NWFFS twine or some other kind of twine, or it's wire, which there a lot of balers are going away. So I don't really know how to answer that question. I know that's is a concern, but I don't really know that we have the flexibility right now to be able to do that. Our twine it's a pretty interesting program. I've learned a lot about how they produce that lately, in that PolyXL makes a lot of twine in different colors, but in order for them to specially make our yellow and purple twine, they have to clean out the factory, add those dye products and they only produce our twine for a month out of the year. So that's why we have our orders in so early, is so that they know how much they need to make. They do make us a little extra now. We've asked them to do that. But it's just one of those situations where that's pretty much the agricultural standard. I'm not aware. I know some places will use a sisal. It just depends on the producer, and if that's a personal concern or a concern with where the hay is going for the end user, then that end user would probably need to search out a producer that's willing to use an alternative wrapping system, whether that's sisal that they could put a tag on, or a sticker, or in fact, even just have it with a transfer certificate if that's a major concern.